Shane,
Hey,
Taryn
Steve,
Leigh. Welcome to Life in a Garden Online. It's fabulous to have you here tonight, darling. Bringing romance back.
Yay! About time, though, actually.
Why romance?
I'm just one of those people that I like feel good, I've read my entire life, and I think I'm an only child, so I read because I was lonely. And I started off reading Enid Blyton books when I was a child. So for anyone who's read those, it's fantasy and it's, happy books and it makes you feel good. And then I moved on to romance with a bit of mystery. So I never was that Mills and Boons kind of romance reader. I was more like a suspense romance or romance with mystery. And so when I wanted to write, I wanted people to feel like when they close the book, they feel good at the end, and not just, I know like with crime and psychological thrillers, you like creeps out the whole time, you're looking behind you, like who's there? And so I just wanted to, bring that feeling with so many bad things in the news, and, especially being a South African, everywhere you look is just negative. And so I tried to have that positive fuzzy feeling. So that's why I love romance.
So tell me, the little setup behind you, there's the wedding photo and the red roses. Is that part of our romance?
Well, it's actually my anniversary tomorrow. I'm married for 10 years.
Happy anniversary. Bring that photo. Let's have a look at that photo. Come on.
Oh my word, I don't think I can pull it off but I can try and take
Go
it
on, let's see that picture. We have to see the picture.
So that's my baby Luke.
That's he's cute.
And that's my wedding picture.
Wow, look at you, girl. Very,
when I was young and thin.
Yes, I was young and thin once too, but we won't talk about that.
Yes.
And I can't even blame married life, okay? But I'm going to blame lockdown for the last 3 kilos. That I'm definitely going to do.
Yes.
Taryn, tell us all about where you come from and who your parents are and what they like.
Well, I'm actually originally from Durban. So I am a Durbanite. So if you read my first book, you'll find it's actually mostly based in Durban. And then about 6 years ago, we moved up to Pretoria. And that for me was brand new experience.
Culture shock. Was it a culture shock?
It was a culture shock. I wasn't used to the Afrikaans because, people assume that you live in Durban, you hear Afrikaans, but you really don't unless you live on the South Coast or you go to the South Coast. And most people in Durban kind of stick to Central Durban and Durban North, but you don't venture down to the South Coast. So for me, the Afrikaans part, took me a while to adjust and to, hear what people are saying and kind of remember what I learned in school. So that was a while for me. So that's where I come from. I'm an only child to a mom, so I don't know my dad.
So that's why you were lonely.
Yes, and so I got no siblings, no anything.
Oh, shame, you poor thing.
No.
Actually, sometimes siblings are overrated, I have to tell you.
Well, I hear that from my husband, and I'm like, well, maybe I was better off. But, for me, it was like this dream of, it must be so. It was like you romanticize the notion of having siblings. But I really did find, so I was an introvert. I still am an introvert, even though I'm able to talk and be crazy now. But my core personality is that I'm an introvert. And so I would hide in the library in school, and I would read books. And when people were looking for me, they knew to come and find me in the library. And that's how I kind of got through school. I wasn't somebody who was sociable. The teachers used to actually write letters to my mom and say, they're really worried about this child. You need to do something. She doesn't talk to anyone. But it was just that, like, reading was my life. And so that's how I got through school. So eventually when I, grew up, which wasn't so long ago. No, I mean, like,
careful, there's some of us are a little bit older here. Just careful
I ended up going through a really, really tough time. And I was an interior designer, so I actually studied interior design for a while. And so I then moved into procurement, which is like so boring compared to design. And so I used to
Yeah,
try and
that
find
must
a
be
way.
boring.
Oh
Wow.
my God, it's terrible. And so I used to try find outlets to be creative. So I used to paint and, do that kind of a thing. And somebody said to me, why don't you try writing? You always talking about books and you got a great imagination. Just write something. And I had tried in school, but I wrote in the first person when I had tried then. And I realized that writing in the first person just didn't work for me because I kind of want to be in everyone's head at the same time, getting everyone's point of view, and feeling everyone's emotions. And so I actually had picked up a Karen Swan book. So she's also a romance writer.
Yeah.
And she wrote in the third person, but in such a beautiful way that I was like, wow, I think this is the style of writing that I can do. And so I then gave this writing thing a try, but for myself as a way to be creative and express my views. And that's how I got into writing, because my husband convinced me to send it to a publisher.
So you did. You actually went to a publisher.
Yeah, so I then submitted it to South African publishers like Penguin and Pan Macmillan, and they came back to me. It was actually Penguin publishers who came back and they said, right now in South Africa, the market for romance isn't there. They mostly publish, political books or celebrity books or crime or, but the romance books they don't do. And because my first book had the character go from London to South Africa and back to London, they said to me, why don't you contact a UK publisher? They might consider it because the character's moving around. And so I did that, and that's how I got published in the UK.
That's amazing. And how
So,
well
yeah.
is it? How well is your book done in the UK? The first one, let's talk about.
Well, it did well enough, but it wasn't like a 1 million copy sold version of a book. But it was well enough for the publishers to be happy to publish it also in audiobook. And if you know, publishers these days are not, they don't take your book. They'll do paperback and Kindle. Actually, most publishers are just doing Kindle at the moment. If your book does well in Kindle, they'll push it to paperback. But my first book, they even pushed it to audio. So for me, that was a positive sign.
That's amazing for a first book to get that kind of recognition, to actually get a publisher the first time out. That doesn't happen to anybody. I mean,
yes.
J.K. Rowling, her book was rejected about 30 times.
Yeah. Well, I did get enough rejections, don't get me wrong. But I just kept pursuing, what I did was, because they normally tell you send it to a publisher, you wait 8 weeks, then they reject you, then you send it to another publisher and you wait 8 weeks. And I was like, oh, hell no, I'm sending it to everybody and I'm seeing who comes back. And so in between the mix of rejections, I got 2 acceptances. And so that's how I went forward.
Oh, I think that's absolutely fantastic. And then did they say to you, are we getting a second book?
Yes, but I wasn't happy with my first publisher just because their editing services weren't great, to be honest, right? So I don't know who they used, whether they got an in-house editing team. That's what they say they do, but I just felt that it wasn't good. And when they published the book, they published the wrong version of the book. So they published one that I had edited all these months, and then they published a version that had still mistakes and they actually cut out a whole paragraph, and I was like so furious, I can't tell you.
No, I can believe that. That's crazy.
So for the second one, I refused to go with them, and so they were great at marketing. That was one of their strengths. They're really, really good at marketing, but when it comes to the editing piece, I wasn't happy, so I didn't go with them for the second one.
So what did you do for the second one? What was the process there?
So the second one, I'm with Kingsley Publishers. So they're like a really small publisher. They've only published a few books in South Africa. But for me, it was fine because I was also trying to get into the South African market. When I did try and send it out again to Pan Macmillan or, Penguin, Jonathan Ball, I just got the standard no with no response of why. And I think the first time when I sent it to Penguin and they came back with the no because we're not publishing romance, that was very helpful because then I was like, okay, this time I just got the standard. I'm seeing Kim said, did I try any agents? I actually tried an agent in the UK, she publishes for Julie Kaplan. So she's quite a well-known UK author there, but she writes these very happy romance books. You know, your typical, the main character is just happy and wonderful and everything about them is perfect. And
don't you hate people like that?
Guy. Oh my goodness. I'm like, I can't write those books. Like, everyone can't be happy. That's not my life. So so she said to me, oh, if you can change your book to, you know, more like what Julie Kaplan does, where the characters are more happy and positive and it doesn't have these dark moments, then I'll definitely represent you because your writing style is amazing. And then I was like, I can't. I will be killing my soul if I had to write those happy books.
Yeah, you must write what you write. I mean, that's what you do.
Yes.
And what about writing some humor into your romance? Like,
I would love to.
What's that chick's name who writes the watermelon book? What's her name? She's in a book. It'll come to me. I'll wake up.
I need to read
about 3 o'clock in the morning, and it'll come to me.
Yeah.
She's an English writer. She writes funny romances. I'm just trying to think. Anyway.
Okay. Well, when you know, please tell me, because I would love to read more humorous books. Because my problem, I don't know, I think I just have a very dry sense of humor. Because when I do read books that are considered romantic comedy, I don't find them funny. Like, I don't even chuckle. And then I'm like, whoa, what I would write here to make myself like laugh out loud. So I would like to read something that comes across as very funny so that I can kind of, you know, formalize it in my head how I would do that.
I think that the problem is with English humor, particularly English humor, is it's very dry. So
yes,
you know, you've got to read it in the way so that the comments are very droll in the way they're delivered, and I think that's where the humor comes in. You know, so maybe I'm not saying to change your style, but if you want to try something a little bit, you know, a little bit different, but then you're not English. You know what I mean? You're not English, and if you are focusing on the market, maybe try for the kind of sense of humor that we have here. You know.
Yes.
You know, once people are laughing, it doesn't matter what you say, they'll laugh.
Yeah, but you know, the difficulty also is because the first book was UK, and then they kept changing like phrases or terminology or things that I say, and they're like, no, you can't say this, you know, it wouldn't apply to the UK audience. And then when I did the second book, because I had developed like fan base in the UK, and I kind of got to know authors and editors in the UK, I had the book edited before I sent it out to the publishers by a UK editor, and she was like so annoyed with me using the word press stick, for example, in my book, which I kept
branding.
Like, take it out, what is press stick? And I'm like, press stick is something we use to stick stuff in South Africa. I don't know what other name you can call it, like sticky stuff, but it's not the same. It's press stick. I have to call it press stick.
Yeah, what's press stick in England? We'll have to find out.
Yes. So imagine me trying to write humor. I would have to send it to a South African editor, most probably, and try and find some English humor to try to balance it out. Blue tack. I didn't even know that.
Blue tack, yeah,
Bostik.
No, isn't Bostik South African, Shamini? I'm sure Bostik's South African. Taryn, have you ever read Shirley Conran?
No.
Oh, God, you have to read Lace. I think I read it when I was about 10.
Oh, wow.
Lace is like the ultimate romance about 3 friends and their loves. You have to read. Oh, girl, I've got a whole list of old books to tell you.
Please.
You've got to read the old stuff.
That'll be great. The oldest I've read is Wuthering Heights, and that for me was like a romantic drama, which kind of suits the way that I write. So that was great. But send me, I would love to, please, because you know, the more you read, the better a writer you become, because Absolutely. You start to see how people form their minds and how they wrap their minds around a plot. Which that's the part I love the most, is the reading part.
What are you reading now?
I actually am not reading anything at the moment. Don't tell anybody, but I was reading a Julie Kaplan book, the latest one she came out with, which was something about Tokyo. And I got through half and I'm like, I can't read this thing. And this lady has become like friends with me, you know, on social media. And I don't know how
She's watching tonight, you know that.
I know, please. Don't say that. I don't know how to say that this book just did, and I've read so many of her books, but that one just I can't finish it. I really can't finish it.
You know, life's too short to finish books you don't like reading.
Yes. So it's the truth, you know. And I mean, I know not every book is for everyone, including my own book, right? Not everybody will love it. And so you just can't take offense to that, because you can't write for everyone, unfortunately.
No, you can't. You actually have to write for yourself.
That's true. So I didn't actually, after putting that, like parking that book, I didn't read anything else because I was getting ready for the launch. But the one that I read before that was my favorite author, which is Karen Swan. And so I had read that book of hers, and that was really, really great. Hold on, let me get the cover for you. The Hidden Beach. It was really, really good. And she writes this romantic suspense where, you know, you like at the end you're like, what? How did that happen? She's just amazing, and I really admire her. So I read everything that she writes because I try to take tidbits of how her mind works. It's quite great.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think it's amazing that you actually want to like learn from what, you know, the way other authors do things, and yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. Taryn, let's talk about The Secret Letters.
Yes.
You have a woman in a really lousy relationship. I could, for the first time, I looked, this relationship's not going to last. Tell us how you got there.
Well, what happened was, so maybe just to say how, or the style of books that I write. So I try to write books that are of a female character who goes through a difficult time, because I think that's realistic for all of us. And then she finds her inner strength somehow to overcome that difficulty. And there's a male character that supports her along the way, and that obviously is a love interest. But at the same time, I try to represent different types of men in one book. So in all my books, you'll see each male character has their own personality. So some are good, some are bad, some are rubbish, some you want to slap. And it's to show you that men are not perfect, and this notion that we're going to fall in love with the perfect man is like absolute rubbish. And so when I hear that. Yeah, he knows his imperfections, which is great. That's why I love him.
You just keep telling him, right?
Yes, and I write books about it too. But so the thing is that when I started with this book with Rachel, I needed to have that terrible boyfriend, you know, the one that you should have let go, but you're kind of holding on to. And so that's how the book starts. Yeah. And that's how it starts with her and Will. Is like, he came across as a Casanova, and he's charming, and he's the singer, and he was really lovely. Yeah, exactly. But as time goes on, you start to see the cracks, and you're like, you know, are you holding on to the memories of yesterday, and that's what's keeping you in that relationship, or is this guy really a good guy? And so I tried to explore that about his character in the book. I just want to grab a blanket. Sorry, it fell down and I'm cold. Yes.
But your bubbly personality should make up for any coldness there is.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm wearing my slippers.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, so then Rachel herself, I mean, she's a therapist. She should be able to see what's going on.
She's blind to her own problems, unfortunately. And I think, so I actually consulted a psychiatrist when I wrote this book. If you read the notes at the back, she's mentioned there. And I had said to her, you know, how possible is it for somebody who's a psychologist to be blind to their own issues? And she gave me information like, you know, every psychologist or psychiatrist actually has to go through therapy themselves, because they could be projecting their own issues onto their patients. And you know, so they got to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen. And so she said it's a false notion that if somebody is in that profession, that they aren't blind to their own issues. And so that's why I created Rachel with her own flaws, being blind to her own issues. And I actually sent the book to that psychiatrist to say, you know, can you check that it's realistic in how it's portrayed, that she's actually blind to her own life. And it's quite true that, you know, somebody can be in that profession, and they know all the data, or, you know, the book knowledge. But when it comes to self-reflection, which we all, I think, is a reality for all of us, it's not that easy to self-reflect. So I showed that in Rachel's character.
Okay. But Rachel's really lucky. She's got a very supportive family. Apart from the brother's wife.
I know, wasn't she terrible?
People like that. Do you know that? We have friends, and the sister-in-law is exactly like that. She's a horrible character.
Yeah. And you know, the editor actually asked me to take that out because she said she felt like I had too many like dark, if you want to call it dark characters, but some people were just really ugly. But I felt it was important to show that dynamic with the brother and the sister, and how people can end up in relationships where they are controlled or manipulated, or, you know, they give up an entire great family. You can see Rachel comes from a great family, but she gave that entire thing up, or he gave that entire thing up, because he is so blinded by this psycho woman.
Yeah.
And so so that I wanted to show. And so I think, but Rachel's family is really supportive. Her parents are great. Her father, you know, at the beginning of the book, you get that moments of the fatherliness that comes from him, and how, you know, there's a strong bond there between the two of them. And then as the book progresses, you know, the father's not there, but Mr. Lemon is. So Mr. Lemon takes on that kind of fatherly role.
So nice, Mr. Lemon.
I know.
We all need a Mr. Lemon in our lives.
Yeah, we do. And he's actually named after a real person that I knew when I was a little girl. And he's probably, you know, gone by now. He was a very elderly gentleman when I knew him. But he impacted my life so much that I wanted this same type of a character, but I kept his name. You know, it's the first person where I've kept their real name, because for me it's sentimental to always remember, you know, this amazing person that I knew.
So he was actually Mr. Lemon.
Yes, obviously not in the same way, but it was a real man that I knew that had the same fatherly characteristics as Mr. Lemon does.
Oh yeah, he sounds absolutely adorable. He sounds like the kind of guy, you know, those like memes, like if you had a chance to sit on a park bench, who would you want to talk to? Well, Mr. Lemon is that guy. And then of course Rachel
absolutely
is fabulous because she has dogs.
She has dogs, and those were after my own dogs. Oh man, they don't even know a book was written about them.
Well, I hope you've read the book to them so they know that there's a book all about them.
Yes.
Okay, so we have some questions here.
Yes.
Let's just go to the comments. Publishers are very reluctant to even consider books these days. Well done. Well done. That's so wonderful.
Thank you.
Tiny agents. Interesting. It's not the first time I've heard an author say that the agent wants major changes before they'll represent you. Well done on sticking to your guns.
Thank you.
How do you decide on the names for your characters?
That is a tough one, I must say, because for me, my characters feel like real people to me. I know that might sound a little bit loony.
It's okay. You're allowed to sound loony. You're right.
Yes. But they really do. So first I formulate them in my mind like nameless, so they have no name, you know, they're just people, and I get the emotion, and I like when I lay in bed at night, I imagine their lives. So I can imagine going for coffee with them, or what they would say, what they would wear, you know. So as like they still feel real to me even now. Like I could probably meet them on the side of the road, you know. So I draw an imagination. But the toughest part is coming up with a name, because I go through so many names, and it must fit with that emotional connection that I have. And so maybe it's my own, because there's been many times when I've looked at a name and I'm like, oh, no, I know someone with that name. I never want to use that name. So it's probably like my own personal, you know, association with the name. But I go through names. I even go as far as trying to know what the name means. So does the name have a meaning that could be contrary to how the character looks? And then also, what country does that name, is it popular in? Because I'm writing books for a South African audience and for a UK audience, because that's, you know, where my books kind of go, in those two places. So the name it can't be like some weird American name that has no relevance to us in South Africa. So I try to Google and see, where does that name, is it common in our country? How common is it, so that it still feels familiar to you? And so that's kind of how, but it's a longer process, I think, choosing the names than it is like thinking up the characters, because that's a hard part for me. That it takes some thought.
We've established, based on what you said, that your characters are alive for you. Do they actually have conversations with you?
They do, and I feel like I can talk to them at any point in time. Like, I feel almost, it's a strange thing to say, please don't ever think I'm mad, but I feel like their lives are still going on. So even though like I've written the first book and the second book, I still feel like those characters' lives are still going on, and I can kind of see what they're doing now. You know, in my first book, the character's name was Sarah. It's like she's having a baby. You know, this is what's happening. They really do feel like people. And the other day, I had a phone call from a friend of mine who read my book for the first time, and she was like, "Oh my God, you know, I wanted to slap Will," and I'm like, "Me too," you know, because I was like, finally somebody feels this pain I have inside of me, to just give him a slap. And so for me to have that conversation about them is like gossiping about like real people. That's how it feels.
I love your bubbly effervescence. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm going to read an excerpt.
Please.
So you've already told us that you actually have a process. So you have a formula basically of how you want to do it. But do you have a process for writing? So are you what do they call a pantser, by the seat of your pants, or do you plot and actually work out where's it going?
So I'm a bit of both. So I have the basic story in my mind, like who is going to be the main characters, what will happen. So when is going to be the big reveal of the secret? Because I always try to have a secret in the book, something that you don't know. And then also, how will it end? You know, so it's literally the beginning, the middle, and the end. And then I know who the main character is, who the love interest is, and maybe one other person that's crucial to that beginning, middle, or end. Like in The Secret Letters, it was Rachel, her dad, and the love interest. And then the rest of the characters, they write themselves into the book as I meet them in every chapter. So like Mr. Lemon, for example, I was writing chapter 1, and then I needed the dog to walk in Jane's tea garden so that I could find an opportunity to describe my surroundings. Because, you know, you can't just be like suddenly randomly, oh, it's so beautiful with these nice tables. It just sounds crazy. So I needed something to take you into this journey of, you know, seeing where they were sitting. And as the dog walked, and as Rachel went after the dog, suddenly I see this gentleman sitting on a couch and he's playing with the dog. And so I was like, oh, okay. And I actually wrote the whole of chapter 1 not knowing the gentleman's name. That's how you find Rachel even was like, what? I don't even know his name. That's because I didn't know his name either. And then it was only when she met him again, then I was like, Mr. Lemon. And that's how Mr. Lemon came. So there are some characters that just find their way and they take me on their own journey, which I absolutely love. So like meeting new people.
Where do you write on some kind of program? I mean, do you use Scrivener or something, or do you write in Word? What do you write in?
I'm like old-fashioned Word.
It's okay, nothing wrong with Word.
Yes.
So how do you keep track of your characters? Have you got a little black book that you keep the, you know, what she's wearing and what she looks like and when she was born and all that? For all the characters?
Yes, I have normally a page next to me, and I just kind of scribble down their name and their age or their eye color, you know, what they're wearing, so that I don't forget, because the hair color for me is one of those things, and the eye color, I just always forget. I can see the character, but not the hair and the eye color. So that I do write down, and what age the book started at and whether the age changes during the book. So those things I do kind of write down on a piece of paper next to me, and then when I'm finished the book, then I type it all out as part of my submission to the publishers.
Okay. Because I don't know how anybody keeps track of characters and things like that, to be quite honest. So I'm going to read, I'm reading because Taryn didn't want to. I just want you all to know, okay? Taryn, you owe me. Serious.
I do.
Serious. I'm kind of started sort of towards the middle of the book. 2 weeks had gone by and still nothing seemed to change except for the world around her, which she watched daily through the sliding door leading to her terrace. The birds chirped, the butterflies fluttered gently from plant to plant, but she didn't see any of it. She watched without seeing. She existed without living. Detective James had brought home Max and Snuggles as promised, and they faithfully sat at her feet night and day. Rachel sat in the same spot, now wrapped in the gown Rory had given her. It was the easiest choice to make on what to wear, no thinking required. Right now, she wasn't able to make any decisions. She knew that she needed to take her dogs for a walk. She knew that she was being unfair to them, but she couldn't bring herself to leave the house. The only fresh air entered her home was when she allowed them out briefly to use the toilet, then called them back in. If it hadn't been for the fact that she had no curtains or blinds on her sliding door, she probably would have sat in complete darkness. The light, like every thought, was an overwhelming invasion. She licked her lips, feeling the rough texture beneath her tongue. They were cracked. She'd hardly eaten or drunk anything all week. The empty packet of nuts lay on the floor next to the couch, the empty box of chocolates along with it. She'd struggled to eat these past few weeks and had no desire to clean up after herself. A rapturing knock jarred her from her thoughts. Max and Snuggles jumped and growled towards the door. "Who is it?" she called fearfully, moving her hand on the couch to feel for the panic button on her keyring. "It's Rory. I'm coming in, Rachel," he said, inserting the key into the hole. The door swung open before she could protest. Max and Snuggles stood barking at him, but neither one closed the gap. Such heroes your dogs are.
I know.
Rachel calmed them down and Rory came inside, carrying packets of groceries. His eyes clocked the untidy space. There was dog food thrown across the floor, empty glasses, and Rachel's clothes leading in a trail to where he assumed was the bathroom. He noticed the empty look in her eyes. Rory locked the door behind him, but went and opened the door to the terrace. The dogs immediately ran outside. He turned to see Rachel's pained expression as the breeze pushed its way into her living room, slapping her sunken face. "I'm going to make us something to eat," he said, heading for the kitchen. Rachel sat mutely, listening to the cupboards open and shut as Rory tried to find the pots to cook. She was numb, too numb to even be angry with him for barging into her home and thinking it was okay to take over like this. She was too numb to argue and too numb to even help him find whatever it is he was looking for. An hour later, he took a hell of a lot. I could rustle up a meal in about 15 minutes.
He's a guy.
Yeah. An hour later, he appeared with 2 plates filled with chicken noodle stir fry. Seriously? An hour?
5-minute job.
You have to cut the vegetables up as well, or did he go to Woolworths and buy like ready cooked stir fry? "I'm not hungry," Rachel said as he handed her a plate. "Eat what you can," he said, moving to the couch on her left. They sat in silence, the clinking of their forks the only evidence that any eating was taking place. Rachel was surprised at how hungry she actually was. The food felt like lead in her stomach after days of being mostly empty. "I'm glad to see you've bathed," he commented, looking at her still wet hair. Rachel grunted. It was bad enough having him in her personal space and seeing him looking at her this way. "You don't need to do this," she replied, avoiding his comment. "I can take care of myself, okay?" Rory looked around her living room. "Judging from the state of things, I don't think you've been taking care of yourself," his eyes locking with hers. "Listen, I know you don't like me, or so whatever your motive is, just drop it. If Will put you up to this, then go tell him I'm fine." Rory ignored her. Instead, he stood and started tidying up the house. "You should come over to my house." He went into every room and opened the windows and curtains to allow more fresh air and light inside. He found a cloth and started wiping her bloodstains off the floor. She still hadn't been able to bring herself to do it after the attack. Rachel left him to it. She didn't know why, but she had no desire or self-dignity to care. Finally, he came back with 2 bowls of ice cream. "Tell me when I should stop, guys." Rachel took the bowl. Rachel took the bowl, tears filling her eyes as she remembered Daniel. "I don't know what flavor you like, so I'm kind of did my own thing. If you don't like the added bits on top, just push them aside." He watched her intently as she stared hard at the bowl. Rachel moved the spoon around in the ice cream bowl, inside with 3 scoops. 3 scoops! Yuck! A vanilla ice cream topped with sugared cinnamon popcorn, pecan nuts, and a squirt of caramel fudge sauce all around the edge of the bowl. "Oh my God, is this guy a chef?" "Thanks," she muttered, tasting the different flavors that cooled her throat. Max came back inside and growled at Rory. "You're sitting on his couch," Rachel said, amused at Max. "The other one belongs to Snuggles, so I suggest you sit on the couch with me if you don't want to be growled at." I'm going to stop there.
All right.
Otherwise, we might just read the whole book. The one night when we chatted to Rashida Khan, we just wouldn't let her stop reading. She had to read and read and read and read and read.
Shame.
Hang on, this chapter, oh mind, it's got 1.5 pages. I'm stopping there. Otherwise, I'll be exhausted, you know. It's absolutely exhausting.
That's why I didn't want to read.
Taryn, Have you started working on something new?
It's in my head. So that's normally where it starts to formulate first, is kind of in my head. So I'm letting the characters become real before I even put a pen to paper or open my computer, my laptop. And I'm trying to just figure it out. Like for instance, this book, it took me a long time to get to the point of the letters. I had written the whole book in my head. Well, not the whole book, but the main bits. But there was just something missing, and that letters part came in. So I feel the same with this other book that's floating in my mind. I have the main bits, but there's just something that I'm waiting for before I start writing it. So hopefully it'll come soon.
Don't you even make notes or anything?
No,
it's just keep it all in your head.
Yes, because it's like a movie for me. It's almost like a real life movie that occurs, and I keep just thinking about it and imagining different moments of the characters and when they interact and what conversations they have. And then sometimes as I'm imagining this something else happens, which I'm like, oh, that would be great. And then I play around with that idea and imagine it in my mind. You can see I was an only child there.
I can see you playing with your dolls, actually. I have visions of you with the dolls and dressing them up and like having little conversations with each other. And then Ken has like he does the wrong thing and Barbie like slaps him. I can see that happening.
Yes, it was with teddy bears. So, but yeah, I do. So I play this kind of movie, if I can call it that, in my mind. So it's there, but it's not 100% for me to start writing it.
But I'm amazed. How do you remember all of that? I mean, there's a lot going on. There's characters building up. There's without even keeping notes. I promise you, I would have forgotten it instantly. I have these great ideas. I get to the kitchen and I've forgotten what the idea was. And it's only 4 steps.
Yeah, I think it's because I think of them so often, like when I'm walking from one room to the next room, it's like that my mind, I'm still living in my head. I'm not seeing what I'm doing. So I think that's why I don't forget, because that's how they become real to me.
What do you like to live with when you're writing?
What do you mean?
I mean, is your husband allowed to talk to you? What happens if your son starts crying? Are you?
So I can't write with people around or with noise. I can write in a coffee shop because the noise is like mundane, it's not directed at me. But I can't sit at home with my family in the house and write. That just doesn't work for me. So normally my husband has to take my son out for the day, or I take leave from work. And I sit and I write like repetitively for a few days, because once the story starts to flow for me, I just got to get it out. Whereas I chat to other authors and I ask them, because they also got young families, and I say, how do you manage, this balance? I mean, I got a full-time job, plus I got a family, plus I'm trying to write books on the side. So it is a thing to juggle. And so when I ask them, they're like, no, but 10 minutes while I'm waiting for the food to cook in the oven, I just tap a few lines on my phone and I write a chapter. And I'm like, what? I could never do that. Like, I can't imagine it and be in the moment and feel the character's pain in 10 minutes. It doesn't work for me. So I need solitude to be able to write.
Okay, so what about like early in the morning? You wouldn't, how early? I mean, some writers get up 4:30. You see, this is why birth control is just such a fabulous thing.
I promise you.
Ouch!
4:30.
Kim says, are you a member of ROSA, Romance Writers of South Africa? I didn't even know it existed, Kim.
Neither did I. I knew about
Taryn, look at that. Or any other author associations or groups?
No, so I knew about RNA, which is a romantic novel association in the UK, but a lot of the stuff they do, you got to actually go there and sit with them in person, and so I'm not going to fly there all the time. So I didn't join that one. I didn't know there was a South African one. Yay! I'm gonna find that one. Thank you.
I've never heard of it before, so that's fantastic. Who are South African romance writers? Do you know any of others? I have no idea.
I also don't know any, to be honest, because when you go to the store, I find that everything is very political or other genres of books. I haven't seen anything that's romance that I've noticed. So I would love to be able to join that and also meet other people, that would be great. I do know of one, but she writes erotica books. I forgot her name, like Charlene or something like that. But nothing in the type of genre that I write in.
Kim, do you know anybody? Do you know any romance authors in South Africa? Or just Charlene Namdari?
Yeah, that's the one.
Kim knows everything. We just have to ask her, and she'll just pop out the information.
I do. I know a lot of romance writers, and that's my genre. I love romance to bits.
That's great. At least I got one person that likes romance, because people these days like psychological thrillers.
Yes. In actual fact, Rose's conference is coming up in October, and there's lots of exciting things, so you must go and have a look.
Yes, please. I'll be doing that immediately after this. Thank you.
And you must make friends with Kim, because Kim is, what do you call yourself, Kim? She runs an indie writers group.
Yeah, indie authors networking.
Wow.
So, independently published authors. We try and help people get their books, self-published. The cover designers and printers and all sorts of people in our group. You can look for that on Facebook.
Yeah, I will definitely do that. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. And you're welcome to contact me. I'll pass on any contacts you need.
That'll be amazing. Thank you so much, because I feel so disconnected from the South African writing community. I feel like I know more what happens in the UK, so I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
That's why we actually formed the Indie Authors Networking Group, because the authors are, in South Africa, it's not a career that's nurtured.
Yes.
No, it's not.
So that's why we formed the group, to try and nurture writers. And give them the tools and the specialists and the whatever else, give them access to all of that.
And the amazing thing I've realized is the more other writers that you talk to, the better your networking becomes. You actually hone your skill better, because you bounce stuff off of each other, and you're also able to share fans, because if I'm a romance writer, I'm not writing every month, so there's a reader out there that's looking to read a book every month, so I can share with other people. Maybe my fans can also be read someone else's book, and so I found that so useful, and I would love to connect with South African writers. That'll be great.
Yes.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, contact me. Let me just put my email address in, and we can have a chat.
Kim, don't put it in. I'll send it. Just WhatsApp it to me, and I'll share it.
Okay.
All that information that you're busy typing up there that I'm going to delete when I close the meeting is going to be gone in the ether. So just WhatsApp it to me, and I'll share it to Taryn, please. Taryn, let's talk about the cover.
Yay! This cover is so let's just say cover design is a tough thing. Let me show you all my other books, okay, just so that you can understand the struggle I had with this cover. So my first book, the publishers published my book in 2 covers, which is also very rare. My publishers are amazing. But this is the first book, and that's the first cover. But the feedback I got was, no one knows what genre this is, and they don't know what it's about, which I completely agree with, right? But if you read the story, the present makes sense. So they changed the cover to this one, which is like a lady.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. But then when you look at popular books in my genre, like Gil Paul, Karen Swan, all of them, the theme that they all use is this woman that walks with her back facing in some type of setting. So all of the romantic suspense and romantic dramas, all of their covers. So they always say, the publishers, you must try and do it where it like resonates with something else. So the concept or the brief I was given was, okay, you come up with your idea, but it must be with this lady walking with her back facing. So my thing was, because I wrote a book in South Africa and I wrote it in Pretoria, that was the setting. Jacaranda trees in September, for me, is like what screams Pretoria or Johannesburg. And the other thing that the significance of jacaranda trees is that they remind us of spring, and spring is a reminder that there's a new beginning.
And so romance.
And romance.
Romance.
Hello. And so the thing about Rachel's story is that, you know, her whole thing is that she's been through this terrible time, like you can call it a winter. And then there's suddenly the spring that sprung and she has hope again and she starts to live her life. So I felt that the significance of the jacaranda tree spoke a lot to, you know, this concept of spring and new beginnings and hope, because the whole story is built around hope of somebody going through a very difficult time. So when the cover designer designed the cover, you know, they don't do a photo shoot for your cover. So they
stock photos.
Just take, yes, they take stock photos and they take several. So what they did was they took a photograph of the jacaranda trees in South Africa that they found, and then they took pictures of the letters, because, you know, it's called the secret letters. So they took these and they put them in there, and then they needed to find a woman, and so they sent me, like, I think it was probably like 10 or 15 different options, like ladies with dark hair, with short hair, with long dresses, with short dresses, with jeans, and everything just looked horrific. Like, it just, I almost wanted to scrap my jacaranda trees, but that was the only thing I wanted. And so eventually the only picture that worked was the red dress lady and the blonde hair. But if you read the book, there's no one with blonde hair. The main character is actually dark. And so I actually had a blogger message me and she's like, I love your cover, but where's the blonde hair? I didn't get that. Rachel's hair is not blonde. I'm like, I know. But unfortunately, when we tried dark hair, it just did not go with the color scheme. But the benefit, though, if there had to be one, is, well, 99.99999 of all my fans love the cover. And that's the first thing they say, actually, when they interact with me. But the benefit, though, is if you look at cover number 1, it's got, if you can see, there's lavender with a present. So it's red and purple. And if you look here, red and purple, and that was so unintentional. And this one is like red. And so it kind of speaks to similarity in the color, and that it's by the same author, at least you can get that. But it is very, very difficult with this blonde-haired lady that doesn't feature in my book.
Do you know, if you asked me what color Rachel's hair is, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Because is it? Okay, that's great.
Yeah, it's funny enough, stuff like that doesn't make much importance to me. And I'll tell you why, because when you read, if you read action books like Lee Child and Jack Reacher, who's my go-to book for finding comments about books, Tom Cruise played Jack Reacher. If there was ever anybody that should not have played Jack Reacher, it's Tom Cruise. Okay, he's short. He's not Jack Reacher. Jack Reacher is this tall, rough-looking man that's been through the mill that you kind of trust the minute you see him, you know. And Tom Cruise is not that guy. So I don't even notice. So quite frankly, if you'd asked me if Rachel was blonde, I'd have said yes. Absolutely.
That's great.
In fact, if you said Rachel's not even white, I wouldn't have, you know, it's like, oh, okay, fine. It wouldn't make a difference, you know, like absolutely.
Yeah, and I also do that. So when I read books, I always skip over the description of how an author describes them. And the authors will probably be offended if I say that, but I do that because in my mind, I want to interpret the character in my own way, how I envision them. And most times as authors, we don't describe the person's features like the minute you see them in the book. Like you don't start with, and Rachel, the blonde-haired woman with green eyes. You know, that's not how the story goes. You describe their features like maybe 3 chapters in or something, or later in chapter 1. But then as a reader, I've already formulated in my own head what I assume they look like based on your description of, you know, the personality. So I feel like if I'm going to read what that author said, I'm going to ruin it for myself. So I just like skip that part and move, you know, down. So as a reader, I don't notice. I was hoping other people wouldn't notice. So
yeah,
I'm grateful.
I didn't notice at all. But what was interesting was that comment. What was that comment that lady made about the cover when I posted it on Facebook?
Hated it. She said it was jarring. She completely hated it, and I respect that. You know, everybody has their own opinion. She was the only one that hated it on your thing, and then I had one other person on a UK blogger, because you know my book's been on a blog tour with 28 bloggers, and every single blogger's had a positive feedback on the cover except one, where the lady said that, oh, my trees were they were photoshopped purple. There's no purple trees out there. Yeah. And someone was kind enough to post pictures of South Africa and was like, excuse me, but every September South Africa has these trees and they really are purple. And I was very grateful for that person who told them that, you know, these are real trees. But that was her comment, is that she felt that, so that lady on your one said it was jarring. She felt the cover was jarring. And the other lady said she felt the trees were fake, but they're not fake.
I think jarring actually is not a bad description, because you know it's noticeable. So if it's jarring, it stood out. You've actually noticed it. So at least,
and that was the point.
Yeah, you've processed something in your head. You noticed the book was jarring. Where is the book available?
So it's available at Exclusive Books online. It's also on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. And then obviously for the rest of the world, it's available in every other Waterstones, Barnes & Noble, everywhere else. But in South Africa, it's Exclusive Books and Amazon. And then from me.
Okay, so if anybody wants it, I can give your details to anybody to make contact directly. That's fantastic. Taryn, I want to thank you for spending the last hour with us. It's been absolutely wonderful chatting to you. As I said earlier, your bubbliness, your effervescence, it's a real treat to chat to somebody who's not jaded by life already. And, you know, just the excitement of having your second book out, everything of the best. I hope it goes fantastically well.
Thank you. And thank you so much for agreeing to read my book and review it. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you for this time that I've been able to spend with everyone. And Kim, I look forward to talking to you. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to me. I really appreciate it.
Whoever's around Saturday morning, we are chatting to Sally Andrew, Death on the Limpopo. We're not actually discussing Death on Limpopo. We're actually doing all 3 books because they're being released as a special at the moment for all 3 books. So, but we will focus on Death on Limpopo, which I absolutely loved. If you have, you must read Sally Andrew.
Okay? Yes, I will.
There's a bit of romance
that you've been featuring recently. I actually want to get all of them.
Yeah, Sally Andrew writes about Tani Maria, and Tani Maria is all about food. Man, you got to love this woman. And she's in love with a policeman who's got a big moustache. I mean, really, what's more not to love? So that's Saturday. Then Sunday we chatted to Corinne Jennings, who lives in Brazil now. So yes, we have, you know, fabulous books lined up. And everybody have a lovely weekend. See you Saturday morning. Shabbat Shalom for tomorrow. Love you all madly, and good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.